The night the sky shattered, the world as you knew it ended. You had always believed Earth was alone in the vast, endless universe, until the ships came. Silent, silver monoliths gliding through the atmosphere, their presence swallowing the stars. They didn't come with peace offerings, nor did they send messages of diplomacy. They came with command, with power, and leading them was Prince Kael of Zephyris. You had only heard his name whispered in terrified breaths by those who knew of his race. The Zypherians, conquerors of galaxies, destroyers of civilizations. He was said to be merciless, undefeated, and born with a heart made of ice and fire. And now he stood before you. His silver eyes reflected the dying embers of your ruined city, his armor dark and edged with strange glowing symbols. He looked almost human, but there was something about him, too sharp, too ethereal, too unearthly. "You should be afraid of me," he murmured, his voice deep and smooth, as if woven from the threads of the universe itself. But you weren't. If you were going to kill me, you would have already. Your voice was quiet but firm. A flicker of something, curiosity, amusement, crossed his face, but he said nothing. Instead, he turned away, watching the ruins of your home with a gaze that held too much emotion for a conqueror. And that was how it began. You were taken aboard their mothership, a floating empire that hovered above the ruins of Earth like a god's throne. At first, you resisted. You fought, screamed, tried to escape. But the truth was unavoidable. You were now a captive in an alien kingdom. Kael was not cruel, but he was cold, distant, always watching you with unreadable silver eyes. His presence was a storm held in control, power restrained, emotions locked away. "Why am I here?" you asked him one night, standing in the vast open balcony of his chambers, staring at the endless sea of stars. "Because I chose not to kill you." His voice was like velvet and steel, smooth yet unyielding. "Why?" he hesitated. For the first time you saw uncertainty in the eyes of the galaxy's deadliest warrior. "I don't know." The first time he touched you, it wasn't out of force. It was a night of stormlight, the alien sky alive with electric hues of violet and blue. You were in the Royal Observatory, staring at a planet far away, wondering if Earth ever looked that peaceful from the outside. Kael stood beside you, his presence like gravity itself, pulling, relentless. "You miss it." His voice was soft, almost hesitant. You nodded. It wasn't perfect, but it was home. A silence stretched between you, thick with something unspoken, unbreakable. And then, his fingers brushed against yours. You stilled. So did he. His hand was warmer than you expected. His skin not like a human's, too smooth, too charged with energy. It was the lightest of touches, fleeting yet burning. "I should not want this," he murmured, almost to himself. But neither of you moved away. And that night, the first crack appeared in the armor around his heart. It happened when you least expected it. You had argued, a brutal, painful argument, words like weapons cutting through the fragile bond between you. He had said something cruel, something to push you away, and you had slapped him, your breath shaking, your eyes stinging with unshed tears. "I hate you." The words left your lips like poison, and for the first time Kael flinched. The great prince, the untouchable warrior, he looked hurt. You turned to leave, but he caught your wrist, his grip firm yet desperate. "Say it again." His voice was low, rough. You refused to look at him. "I hate you." A sharp inhale, a pause, and then he pulled you to him, crashing his lips against yours. It was not gentle, it was raw, bruising, filled with every unspoken emotion he had locked away. His hands framed your face, holding you like you were both his salvation and his ruin. And in that moment, hatred turned to something deeper. Something neither of you could take back. The war was coming, Earth's final stand. Kael was torn between two worlds, his duty as a prince and his love for the only person who had ever made him feel human. "Run away with me," you whispered, clutching his hand in the darkness of his chambers. His eyes burned silver in the dim light. Torment, desire, love. "They would hunt us." His voice was hoarse. "They would never stop." "Then let them come." A long silence. Then, he kissed you again, slower this time, filled with something deeper than passion. "I would burn the stars for you," he whispered against your lips. And for the first time, Prince Kael chose love over war. But love was never meant to be easy. They came for him, for you. The Zypherian High Court deemed his love a betrayal, and for the first time in his life, Kael stood against his own people. But he was one man, one warrior against an empire, The battle was brutal. Blood stained the silver halls, and in the end, he fell. You ran to him, hands trembling, pressing against the wound on his chest. His fingers brushed against your cheek, a weak ghost of a touch. I told you. His breath hitched, pain flickering in his silver eyes. I would burn the stars for you. No, please, stay with me. Your voice broke, tears falling. His lips curved in a faint, tragic smile. I already did. And as the Zypherian fleet retreated, as the war ended and the world began to rebuild, the universe mourned the loss of a prince who had chosen love over conquest. You gazed up at the stars, whispering his name, knowing that somewhere among them, he was still watching, still loving you, even in death.